You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, Posture Screen, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Moguls, 5-Star Management, Chiro Health USA, Local Gold, The Goodman Factor, McCaffrey Clinical Mentoring, Chiro Thin, Unmarket Your Practice, and Free My Pain Now with Dr. Matt DvRyl. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 144 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I am your co-host Luke Millette. Here's your host, Jim Chester.
Hey everybody, so today we have the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Eric Huntington, and if you guys want to know more about how to put the business back into chiropractic, stay tuned for this dynamic episode. Today we have Dr. Eric Huntington coming in from Florida, and you have quite a unique story. You've been practicing, I believe, almost 20 years, and you are, I would consider, more of a business model front than just a chiropractor. So I think it's going to be really fun to talk to you about how you got into chiropractic and where you are today. But for those of our audience that might not know who you are, let's just tell people a little bit about yourself and how you got into this chiropractic world.
Sure. Well, thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. And, as you mentioned, I am a chiropractor. I went to New York Chiropractic College and graduated in April of 2001. I opened a practice within a few months of graduating as soon as I got my license in Maryland. That's where I had gone to university before going on to Chiro school. And, built that practice up pretty well. I mean, I started as a cash practice. That was sort of the idea of what I wanted to build. I'd studied a lot of books out of the library on business in Chiro school. I'd listened to tapes. I'd gone to seminars as a student. And so, I had gathered enough knowledge to be, to feel like I had enough confidence to go ahead and start my own practice. Now, I'd say about 10 months into practice, I found myself doing pretty well. I had gone from 0 to about 130, 140 patient visits a week. And that was great. But I also saw that I didn't really know how to expand from there. I mean, my income was low. It was sort of a low fee, high volume, wasn't quite high volume yet, but pretty high for 10 months, low fee practice. And I had one staff member. I didn't really know how to be a leader. I didn't feel like I knew how to, really scale the business so that I could grow beyond what I personally could do. And that's when I started searching for help in terms of more information, more knowledge. And I think that's important, as a chiropractor. There really are two hats if you're going to own a practice. You've got your doctor hat, which you get most of that hat in school, and hopefully you continue to develop that as you move through practice, learning new things that you can apply to help your patients. But for those of us who own a practice, there's also the business owner hat. And I didn't have a lot of training in that up front. And I think I had one course in Chiro school. And you know how that goes. I'm sure other docs have told you. It's not a lot of training to prepare you for owning a business, But, fast forward to where I am today. I've owned 2 practices. I've taken them through the full life cycle. I built them up. In one of them, I added several different services in that clinic. And I was able to build them up well enough where my staff ran them. And, I ended up living in Florida for about 5 years, from 2013 to 2018. The practices ran very well, continued to expand without me. And it was in that time when I got involved more heavily in consulting and helping other doctors to find the success that they were looking for.
So at this juncture, what does it mean for you to be able to take the skill sets that you've learned over the past 18 years and develop that and give it to other people that are looking for greater success and being able to become more financially viable within the chiropractic profession?
Yeah, it's very important to me. It's really, chiropractic has given me so many wonderful things in my life. I was extremely successful from a business standpoint and financially. I learned so much in the different areas that were important to me. I love healthcare to start. I'm a chiropractor, and I love nutrition. I love the spine, and I love how the human body works. And so it gave me, a reason to learn so much about how the body functions and share that with others. And that's a passion of mine. And at the same time, I love business. I love the game of business. I love figuring out how to make things work and working with a team and building systems. And so it also, chiropractic, because I had to be an entrepreneur and build my own practice, gave me a reason to learn about that and try things and develop my skills in the business world. And then with those two things together, ended up, being able to build a great family, take care of my kids from a chiropractic viewpoint, and have a lot of the other wonderful things I've had in my life. And so I love chiropractic. At this point, I want other chiropractors to be able to achieve whatever their dreams are, because it's more than possible, in this profession. I can't think of a better thing to do, right? Is be a chiropractor, get people well, get people healthy, and experience success in business. I mean, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think that what you're saying there is very important to our audience. Most people, they throw a bunch of money at coaching, or they throw a bunch of money into some type of like advertising or marketing, and they come back and they have like an empty bucket, and they're like, well, I'm sure you experienced that too early on. Like you were coming up from like your first 100 visits, and I'm sure you were like throwing your fist in the air and you're like, yeah, I hit the 100 visits a week mark. Absolutely.
Yeah, big milestone, right? But I've also experienced what you mentioned. I think, here's what I think is important in terms of what I've learned in helping my clients, is that there are marketing strategies. You could do a Facebook marketing strategy. You could do an event where you actually go and do spinal screenings or some other kind of activity. You could have a booth at a health fair. You could do a lecture. Those are all marketing opportunities. And there's a technical way to do that would raise your level of success. But behind that, there's so much behind that in terms of how do you actually, we'll start with, your own mindset in terms of marketing and sales and success. I mean, there's that. And then there is all the training that would go into how do you actually get your staff that work with you to be able to efficiently process new patients, and so that your business doesn't have, it's not like a leaky bucket. So there's all this other stuff that goes into being able to successfully pull off a marketing campaign and have it end up building your practice. And I think for a lot of us, myself included early on, I focused on just the tactical action of the marketing, and didn't realize how much else there was to learn and understand about business and sales and marketing that actually makes something like that successful. Or sometimes they're not successful, and you need to be able to look at it and know why.
But back to what you said earlier, like chiropractors don't get a high aptitude for business. They don't get a high aptitude for marketing. You go to chiropractic school and you learn about A&P, you learn about technique if you're lucky, and then you learn about, how to pass medical exams. So what happens as the chiropractor gets into practice, they might not even have a philosophy class. So they're supposed to be well-rounded in science, philosophy, and art. And really all they've learned is how to do is pass tests and go through the curriculum.
Yes, it's true. And, in one sense, the job of the school is to create a competent doctor. And, we may all have our opinions on what things were good and what things weren't good. But for the most part, most doctors coming out of school, I've hired a lot of associates. Most of them knew their doctor stuff pretty good. They needed practice with their art, right? The adjusting, to get better at it, because they just needed to have more reps. But when you're the owner in a practice, in a chiropractic practice, there's two hats, right? You've got the doctor hat, and then you've got the business hat. And I think it's important for more doctors who are owners to focus on that business hat, learning and developing their skills, because I've known great technical doctors who were amazing at what they did, but they never got to serve many people because there's that other half of the other hat it's just so important. And if you don't have that hat down well, you can't keep your doors open and you can't serve more people, which is the whole point.
And so that's why you became one of the owners of Chiropractic Business Academy, right?
Yep, that's right. In fact, I was actually a client of that company back in 2002. If we refer back to the story I was telling in the beginning, when I first got into practice, I built it up to about 130 a week. And it was like, I did it on a little bit of knowledge and a tremendous amount of effort. I was working like a lot of doctors do, probably 60, 70 hours a week. And I was doing everything in the practice except for reception. I had a receptionist. And I looked up one day and I thought, I can't do this for 30 years like this. I don't know if I can physically do this for 30 years. And I was thinking an entire career, right? And I don't know if I'll be happy doing this like this, because everything that was important in the practice, I had to pay attention to. I had to do. I mean, if I went away on a week's vacation, I think I was even considering this. I was about a year into practice, and I wanted to do something nice with my wife. We'd been married a year, and the thought of going away, spending $3,000 or $4,000 on a vacation between the hotel and the airline tickets, and then also closing my practice for a week or 3 or 4 days was enough to turn my stomach. And so that's when I actually started looking for some help, and I found the Chiropractic Business Academy, and I was a client for about 8 years, and I built 2 very successful practices, and was able to have them completely staff driven. And that's when one of the partners of that company actually retired, and I had started to teach some of their classes. And so I was asked by the other partner to buy into the practice, or to the consulting company. And so that's what I do now. I now work with doctors and help them build a practice of their dreams.
Is there anything unique or different that this consulting company teaches doctors that maybe other programs neglect to teach them?
Yes. So I think the biggest thing is giving the doctors the skills they need to scale the practice. Most other consulting companies that I'm familiar with will focus on some very important things. How do you get more new patients in the door? How do you improve your conversion or sales? How do you get patients to comply with the recommendations that they need based on, the findings? And then, how to run the front desk. And we certainly do that, because those are the 3 main control points in a practice: front desk, marketing, and sales. If you can control those 3 things well, you can grow the practice to a certain point. The problem is that without the leadership skills, the skills in terms of understanding people, how to motivate people, and how to set up a business so that other people get the work done. Without that, you end up with the chiropractor, the owner, maybe having a busy practice, but having everything on his or her back. And it can be exhausting, over the course of a career, to always have to be the one where, the buck stops here, if you know what I mean. And so what we specialize in is helping a doctor build their practice using those 3 control points: marketing, sales, and front desk. But as we do that, we train the doctor's staff, and we train the doctor on the skills they would need to be able to scale. Basically, that means take something that the owner's doing in the practice and doing well, and then teach them how to pass that to somebody else so that that other person keeps that activity going. It could be an associate doctor to treat patients. It could be a receptionist at the front desk. In many cases, it's a marketer to go out and do the marketing for the practice, and just build it like Legos and allow the owner to keep, going up in the organization while other people handle the most of the day-to-day work.
So let me ask you a couple of things there. You said that you wanted to take a vacation with your wife as you're in practice, and it was a huge barrier of influence on yourself. and for you to actually like take and actually do. Did you go and do it?
Oh, the vacation?
Yeah.
I did, and it was awful. You know what happened? I went. It's so funny for me to look at it now, because it's a perfect example of a time when I went and I did something, and I did it because I wanted to spend time with my wife, and I wanted my wife to have a great experience with me, and it was our first year together. And so we went, and I spent the entire time, I remember we were at a beach. I spent the entire time worrying about the practice and the income and whether the patients were going to come back when I got back. And it ended up being, now on the outside, we had a good time. I did my best to make sure that didn't come through. But on the inside, I don't know. If I've ever had an ulcer, it would have been at that time, because I just spent the whole time worrying about money. It was awful, and I hated it.
Yeah, and as you became more systemized, and you learned how to do the 3 control stations, how did that help you build freedom into your life?
Yeah. Well, first it was the knowledge and understanding that there is a way to build a practice, the way I wanted to do it, right? And listen, when you're in practice, as long as you're happy with what you're doing and you're helping other people, right, and you're following the law and all those other basics, well, then it's great. For me, I wanted to build a practice where everything wasn't reliant upon me. And so it was so refreshing to know that it was possible to do that. And so the first thing was learning how to control those 3 areas. How do I get new patients in the door? How do I control the front desk? Because remember, they're in charge of not only the new patients, but the existing patients and keeping them on the care program. And then how do I control the sales? And once I had confidence with that, then I realized that this is nothing more than learning successful skills and quality skills, and then being able to implement that. And you just build one thing on top of the next, and you get more confident, and you get more successes, and you just keep building from there. For me, before I started down that path, I didn't have the knowledge, and I didn't have enough wins under my belt to know that I could, move further in that direction. So those are the 2 things that really mattered.
But you had to obviously take some of your hard-earned money that you were building up as a resource from being in practice, and you had to invest in yourself. And
absolutely.
I think that's one of the subluxations of the mind for most people, is they don't really know how to like say, "Ooh, I should take some of the savings," or I shouldn't like spend like heavily on this, and I should like take some of this money, and I should just figure out where to put my money. And I think that's one of the hardest things is on an earlier interview we did today is money's energy. And if you don't use your energy in the right way, it goes for nothing. So
that's right.
Even for people that have about $2,000 of expendable income, what would you recommend for them to do with that?
Yeah, good. So I want to comment on something, and then I'll answer your question, because you're touching on something that is, I see it all the time in practice with our clients. We all want security, and we're looking at present time, like, can I put food on the table today? And for most of us, that's not an issue today, fortunately, but we're looking more often into the future. We want future security. And the thought is that having enough money in the bank will provide future security. And there is some truth to that, obviously, right? But the real security is your own ability. Because if you're capable and able, and you know that, then you know that the future is not going to be a problem, because I can always create what I need. And so when I realized that I needed to do both. Of course, I need to put money away for the future, but I don't put it all away. I always invest back in myself, because the real security is my own personal knowledge and ability to make things go right in the future. So back to your question of like, a doctor's got $2,000 in the bank, and he wants to get going down this road. I would say start reading books, right? Books are inexpensive, right? And choose books. I like to read books on business. I like Grant Cardone as an author. He's probably got 6 or 8 books out now. And I like his message. And so I like books on business, and I like books on personal development, right? About improving. I've been listening recently to Brian Tracy videos, right? He's one of the guys that's like the last 30, 40 years, he's like a success guru. And there's some of this stuff I apply in my life. Some of the stuff, maybe I feel like I've got something better from some other location, but this is what I do when I drive to and from work. I'm just listening to positive things on business and interpersonal relations and people, and I just keep learning,
Well, you touched on something really cool there a couple times. And one of the three things to be successful in chiropractic practice, you were saying, is the front desk, which is a control position.
Yes.
One of the things also you just said was about personal development and relationships. How important is it for people to have a good, positive personal relationship with the person that's answering phones and collecting money?
Yeah, that's super important. In fact, I'll extend that out to the entire staff. It's so important for the staff that work for you, no matter what kind of business you have, particularly in a chiropractic office, it's so important for them to feel like the owner or the manager cares for them and cares for their personal well-being and wants them to be successful.
Amen.
That's really key. And, one of the ways that I did that throughout my career is I always talk to my staff about their goals. Like, what is it they're trying to achieve? Because, of course, I want them to buy into the goals of the practice, right? But, in order to do that fully, they need to be able to align their personal success with the success of the practice. Otherwise, why are they even there, right? Or they're going to leave eventually if they don't feel like they can attain their goals within your practice. And so I think it's a good habit, like once a quarter, to get together with every staff member in the practice and ask them what their goals are, and then try to help them align their goals to the goals of the business. They might want to raise, they might want to take their kid to Disney World, they might want to move up in the business, they might want to be the manager someday in the practice. We'll talk to them about that and say, well, that's great. I want that for you too. Let's talk about what it would take for you to get there. And let's try to map out a path. The path could take place over many years. It's fine. But if you get the person on the path, now you've got a partner in business.
I think, Dr. Eric, that might be the most important thing anybody's ever told me on an interview over 1,000 interviews.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that came up in today's video interview, because I agree with you. It's one of the most important things you could possibly do in any practice. Remember, practice is a group trying to survive together.
And we can take it one step further. How about we do that for our significant others? How about we do that for our families?
Absolutely. That's right.
Because a lot of times we want people to stay as the person that we first met them as.
Sure.
We don't want them to develop and grow and to transcend from our memory. We want them to stay as they were the first time we ever met them.
Yes.
So it's important to check in with people and ask them what their aspirations are and what their goals are and what their visions are, because maybe they will say one thing that will be inclusive of us that gets us further with them.
That's right.
Rather than us trying to own their personification of who they are once we first brought them into our life.
Yes. That's right. And if it's amazing. We often will think we know what motivates somebody, or we think we know what somebody's goals must be. And it's not always the case. It's amazing to me, as I started to work with my team on their goals, it was surprising to me to find out that, the goals weren't always money. I mean, more often than not, they were experiences. I'll give you an example. I have a staff member that I work with now that what they wanted was a trip to Disney World. And, if you ask this person why not just a monetary bonus and then you can take it and do what you want with it? The answer the person gave was, well, you see, if I earn the money as a bonus, I'll probably feel like there's something else we should probably do with it. We should put it away for the future. We should pay some backlog bills. I wouldn't treat myself to it because I probably wouldn't feel like I deserved it. But if I could win the trip for my family to Disney World, I'd be so happy because, I'd be able, my husband and I'd be able to take my daughter. And the motivation was through the roof. And it was probably greater motivation than if it just simply been a $2,000 bonus. You know what I mean?
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, Posture Screen, Mahalo Wellness, Chiro Moguls, 5-Star Management, Chiro Health USA, Local Gold, The Goodman Factor, McCaffrey Clinical Mentoring, Chiro Thin, Unmarket Your Practice, and Free My Pain Now with Dr. Matt DvRyl. Let's hustle. Well, what we're doing here is we are discussing business acumen.
Yes.
And when it comes down to it, that's what lights you on fire. And I think that was something that within my core, possibility of interviewing you, these are the things I wanted to discuss with you.
Right.
And I know Luke's going to get back to our normal format with you. We've gone down quite a few different paths with you today, but I'm going to pass it back over to Luke, and let's go back to our original format, Luke.
So, Eric, tell me, what are some of your favorite motivational quotes and mantras that you live by personally, and maybe mantras and quotes that you work with in your office?
Sure. I'll give you two come to mind immediately when you ask that question. So one of them is if a person has done something once in the past, they can do it again. Now here's where that applies. As I come across challenges in business or in other areas of my life with my family or with friends, and I think about what it would take to win or achieve in that area, sometimes that initial look is a little bit, it can be a little bit daunting, you know what I mean? But then when I look back on some of the things I have been able to accomplish, maybe they were similar or just a similar magnitude, I go, you know what? I've done it before in the past, I can do it again. So here's where that would come in for a practicing doctor. Maybe at one time they had a highest ever in collections or in new patients in the month or in patient visits, but they've fallen from that maybe over a period of months or years. But the truth is they did it once already, so you can do it again, and it kind of helps me confront, challenges as I move forward.
And how do you think the chiropractic profession as a whole might change or evolve if more doctors joined the Chiropractic Business Academy?
Sure. So, when I look at the chiropractic profession and I look at some of the reasons that we struggle to grow beyond, 7 or 9% of the population, whatever the numbers are. A lot of it comes down to the fact that the majority of the practices in the country are they're run like mom and pop shops. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, they're run like small businesses, very small, meaning, there's the delivery of the service. And then there's usually not much of a business built out around that. You've got the service delivery and then by necessity, some marketing and some sales. And there's, what the Business Academy teaches is really how to build out the rest of that business so that you as the chiropractor or doctors you hire can really focus on delivering the service. And so I feel like, in order for us to grow, we're going to need to learn as professionals who are practice owners how to build out the rest of the business. And that's what the Business Academy focuses on and helps doctors achieve.
And kind of the way things are going right now, the way you see it, where do you think the profession is going to find itself in the next 20 years?
So we have a choice as a group. None of us can make this choice as individuals for the group. We can choose for ourselves as individuals. I think we're at a point where chiropractic is either going to 20 years from now flourish and prosper and be a major player in healthcare, or I think it's going to shrink. And I think that the difference there is going to be whether or not we can organize. And I mean, in the individual practice, being able to organize the individual practice so that it functions and has all the functions of a true business occurring. What I mean by that is like, you've got HR. Most practices don't have a well-developed HR department. And you might think, well, how does that help chiropractors or chiropractic? But it's that HR department that really builds the business and makes sure staff are happy and make sure that staff know what they're doing and know how to do their jobs. That's just one example that is left out of most practices. And so there's organizing systems within the practice so that the practice can continue to grow and expand. That needs to be done on the individual level with each practice. And then, on a state level, we need to come together with our associations and make sure our state associations are headed in the right direction and doing the things they need to do with the state legislatures to ensure that, we have an equal playing field with the rest of the providers. And then on a national level, we need to come together and really make things happen in Washington, D.C. so that our ability to practice is protected. I know that's a tall order, but if we're able to move in that direction, I think we'll have expansion. If we don't, I think it'll be tough. I think if we don't have that as a group, I think you'll end up with some doctors succeeding wildly, and you'll have a larger percentage of other doctors just sort of barely making it or going out of practice. So I think as an individual, the thing to do is make sure you support your state and national associations, but make sure that you're getting the business training you need to get in order to build your practice and be one of those successful ones, no matter what happens to the profession as a whole.
You said some really important stuff there that I'm just going to shine a spotlight on. And one of those things is present time consciousness of what is at stake at the moment. Yep. And that's something that I think all of our listeners should really focus in on, because present time consciousness, which is happening at a legislative state, when it comes to your state, when it comes to like a profession unifying as a whole, we have to start supporting each other, number one, because if the people that are anti-chiropractic see that chiropractors aren't banding together and supporting each other, they're easier to attack.
That's right.
Number one. And number two, back to our earlier conversation, is we have to start investing in the profession. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to hold on to our last $2,000 until Christmas time comes around. And then I think that we need to think about Christmas time is going to war with our strength. And I think that we have to really think about what our strength is and how we can rise up together and invest in each other to make a unified message that supports the future of chiropractic. And I think that that's what we really need to do is, like you said, I study Grant Cardone books. Well, I do too. I study this book. Well, I do too. Well, as soon as we start all raising our hands together, now we can start speaking a similar language, and we can be like, wow, we understand business. We understand politics. We understand what chiropractic does for a family unit. We understand what chiropractic does for a young athlete. We understand what chiropractic does for someone with a degenerative disease. We understand what chiropractic does to the nervous system. Well, how can we start connecting these dots to the people that make decisions for family care? How can we start connecting the dots that make decisions for degenerative disease care? Like, how can we start getting chiropractic from the CVP journals into modern hands that people are making decisions for family care? And I think that's what we really need to do. And that's what's going to get us to the next 20 years to say chiropractic is the most important health art, healing art in the world, because what it does is it connects man to health instead of man to drug. And if man to health is where we want to take the future of chiropractic, then we have to focus on that.
Yes, I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know what else to say other than absolutely 100%. I'm on board with that.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I think our platform is working so well is like when we were off camera, I was saying, hey, we're only like 15% of like our production status of where we're headed with this message. And
Yep.
as we go through that type of like, evolution, one of the things I really like, it's off script, but one of the things I really like to ask people is, what do you think is one of the most important things that happened to chiropractic over the past decade?
Hmm. That's interesting. I think, I don't know when it happened or exactly if there was a defining event, I'm not sure. But it seems to me that over the past decade, there is the rest of the healthcare community, and particularly the medical community, seems to me, at least the circles I travel in, have opened up to the idea that chiropractic has something to offer. And, it's not because I care what they think of me. I don't care, right? What I do care is the fact that 90% of the patients are in their offices. And I think the opening, maybe the defining, I don't know if there's a defining event, but I think it's because there's been this larger movement in the direction of natural remedies, natural healthcare that chiropractic is obviously at the forefront of. And as that movement's made its way through the population, and it's by necessity made its way into medical schools and into doctors' offices, I think it's starting to open the door a bit. And again, I don't care what any particular doctor thinks about what I do. What matters to me is what I know works and the results that I get or my clients get. But it's important because 90% of the patients are in the medical offices. They're not in our offices.
Well, here's the caveat to that is chiropractors are always going to protect the sacred trust, and their job is to do no harm under the Hippocratic Oath. But here's the other spin of that. If we don't tell people the truth about chiropractic, they will get closed for drugs or surgery. So that's the other side of like the battleground is like, hey, we can sing Kumbaya and bang drums all day and say, hey, we can heal people with our hands. But if we don't talk real business mind to them and tell them, hey, you might want to try what we do first before you go over to that side of the line because you can't come back here so easily.
That's right. Actually, as we're talking more about this, I think one of the things, major event that's really opening the door, okay, and it's a terrible thing, but it's the opioid crisis, because unfortunately it took something this dramatic to open people's eyes to what's been going on, maybe to a slightly smaller extent with other drugs and surgeries. This stuff kills people, right? And opioids are an extreme example of that, because it's hard to even find what the benefit is outside of, end of life palliative care for people with bodies riddled with cancer or something, right? But even with some of these other drugs and surgeries where there could be a time and a place for some of them, but they're just massively overprescribed or over-delivered. The opioid crisis is finally waking up a lot of people to this fact. And what's the solution? I mean, the solution is chiropractic care. There's chiropractors all over the country who can handle the number one reason people get put on opioids in the first place, which is
pain management. Yep. And here's the thing, Dr. Eric, is what we need a campaign that says least invasive first.
Yes.
Period. So simple, so easy, so palatable to say, to like to get kids to march around and say least invasive first, whatever it is. Like we just need to come up with a slogan that means that it's pro chiro. It's not us against them, but it's like, why don't we try to keep a healthy family unit than drugging our family unit?
Yes, exactly. That's right. If you want to get me going for an hour, which is obviously not what we want to do on this podcast, but boy, talk about drugging children drives me up a wall. I almost can't take it in practice when I would find that. It's very, I'd have to really sort of get myself together when I'd see that on an intake form of a child. You know what I mean? And then of course, do what I could do to help them to move in the right direction. But it's terrible. Most parents wouldn't do that if they really understood what was happening. But most of them have been pushed in that direction with bad data and, you know, a system that just drives people in the direction of drugs.
And then, as, it unfolds, the people that are doing these mass shootings, I know it's another rabbit hole, but the people that are doing the mass shootings are the ones that were on Ritalin 20 years ago.
Yes.
They were on these psychotropic drugs for depression and anxiety. And now they're the ones that are like causing these mass uprisings within our communities that are like really damaging people's lives. So was it a human problem or was it a drug problem?
No, that's right. You know, if you look at the history of this, up to about 15 years ago, probably up to about 15 years ago, the first few of these mass shootings that I can recall, the news coverage would talk about how the person had recently been on blah, 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 psychotropic drug. And then all of a sudden that stopped. They never talk about it anymore, except in the alternative media, right, on the internet. I have a feeling what occurred is the drug companies who pay the advertising dollars on these news channels, these TV stations, didn't like that bad PR. And so you'll notice now, there's never any talk about that anymore. And it's unfortunate, but I have a feeling, I know if you follow the money, I have a feeling we could figure out why.
Yeah, this conversation's pretty dynamic today, and I'm going to pass the mic back over to Luke before we go further down a different path than what we were scripting on. So, Luke, let's put us back on the path again.
Let's reel it back in a bit. So, Eric, through the Chiropractic Business Academy, I know you probably teach doctors a lot about marketing and how to get more people in their doors. Well, what I'm curious about is what marketing tactics do you use to get doctors to sign up for the academy? What are your favorite marketing tactics?
Sure. Well, you have to go where the eyeballs are, right? And so there's a lot of eyeballs on Facebook right now. And so, one of the ways that we get in touch with the doctors is, through Facebook. We also do direct mail. There was a period in time when there was so much mail arriving in people's mailboxes. And then, of course, the social media showed up and those kinds of things. And so a lot of advertisers went in that direction. But there now is a void in the mailboxes to some degree. So there is an ability to reach people that way also, again, because so much traffic has moved now to the electronic media. But we reach people through Facebook. We reach people through articles we write in journals. We also offer, the concept of a lead magnet. Like we offer something that people would think would be valuable. Usually it's information about marketing, or it's about, building your practice, scaling it. And we'll offer something like that in exchange for contact data, email address, name, town you live in, something like that. And that allows us to get in touch with people because they'll get the information, they get an idea of what it is we have to offer, and then usually they're interested to at least find out more about us.
And on the topic of staying engaged and in touch with people, do you have a favorite app or technology to stay engaged with either your clients or your practice members?
Sure. So, one of the services that the Business Academy offers is called New Patient Machine. Okay. And that service is, it's several different services. The one that generates most of the new patients directly is Facebook marketing. And it's been very successful in my practice and, hundreds of our clients around the country, driving in anywhere from 3 to 8 new patients a week is the typical numbers. But to answer your question, there's a service that we offer on the back end of that. And we call it Follow-Up Machine. And what it is it's basically a CRM that we allow our clients to dump all their leads into, so that, I can remember, in practice, we generate literally thousands of leads every year that we never actually arrived in our office because we did a lot of marketing. And so what we're able to do now is dump those leads into software, and we have campaigns built out based on what the person's main concern is, so that those people continuously get touched once every 10 days, once every 2 weeks, with some offer from the office. And so that really allows for incredible increases in efficiency because you're not, when you contact somebody in the public, they may or may not be at a point where they feel they need your service. If they are, great, they can come in. But more times than not, the person might not be the right time for them, but 2 weeks from now might be, or 2 months from now. So if you can extend the amount of time you're in front of them, you increase the chances of them finding out about your service and coming in.
Bravo.
Nice. So let's dive a little bit into your personal life. What kind of things do you like to read? Do you listen to other podcasts? And what are some of your favorite hobbies?
Sure. So 3 areas of life I love to explore. One is nutrition. Personally, I've got a lot of food sensitivities, and so it took me a fair amount of time to figure out what was the right fuel for my body. And so just by sheer necessity, I started to learn a lot about nutrition and found that I really liked it. And so I read books on, any aspect of nutrition, how hormones work, or, how weight loss functions compared to hormones, or diabetes, just anything that I can learn about thyroid conditions. I just enjoy understanding the human body. And that started in chiropractic school, maybe a little bit before as a bio major in college. So I'll do nutrition. So I'll read books, watch videos, that kind of thing. And then there is business development. Absolutely love it. When you think of just about every transaction in life, half of it has to do with money. Anytime you're buying or selling, or, unless you're trading something where you've got service or product for service or product, one half of that transition or that transaction is money. And it always had to do with businesses, right? So I enjoy learning about business, learning how to market, learning how to sell, learning how businesses function. So I'll read books about that kind of stuff. And then personal development. Learning techniques and philosophies and ideas about how I can achieve more in all areas of my life. Of course, business is a focus, but also like physical fitness or relationships with my wife. I enjoy that. I think, if there's one viewpoint that I've had throughout life that's helped me maybe more so than anything else, it's the idea and the belief that I can improve conditions in my life. So I'm always looking to get better financially, get better physically, get better with my relationship with my wife, improve the relationship with my kids or my neighbors. And it's just fun, for me.
And if you had one piece of advice to give to a struggling chiropractor or chiropractic entrepreneur, what would you say to them?
Okay, so one piece of advice would be find somebody who's done what you want to do and follow that person. If they have books, if they have videos, if they have a program that you can do, like a consulting program or anything, right? Because, some of us are creative enough to come up with something that's never been thought of before. I'm not sure if I'm in that category. Most of my goals have been achieved by somebody else. And so, I don't have an ego about finding somebody who's already figured it out and then studying them and studying what they've done to achieve their goals. I feel like that's just a smart way to do it.
And then on top of that, before Luke gets into that, I would say, and then invest in them and spend time with them.
Yes. Yes. And the investment can be small in the beginning. Maybe you just start following them on Facebook or reading their book. That's a start, as your resources allow, show up at their seminar or go meet them. Maybe they're just another doctor, across town or something. Fine. Go meet them, have lunch with them, but find a mentor that's doing what you want to do and follow them. I think it's just so important.
Great advice.
Where can people go to find out more about you and what you're doing? What are some websites you could give our listeners?
Sure. So they can go to thebusinessacademy.com. So all spelled out, thebusinessacademy.com. And they can also Google new patient machine. And we've got a couple of, pages that will come up as well.
That's good stuff.
Our phone number, if you're interested in calling in, is 888-989-0855. And that's to the Business Academy. And, my goal is really to transfer the knowledge that I've gotten that's allowed me to, build 2 practices from nothing all the way up to being fully staff driven. And then I end up selling both of those practices to associate doctors that had worked for me. And it was a fantastic transaction. Financially, it was great for me. And for them, they were able to get a practice that was already fully built out, they were 10 or 20 years ahead of where they would have been if they had started from nothing. So it worked out for all parties involved. And it was really a great lesson for me in terms of being able to construct transactions with other people in our profession where everybody wins. And so I want to take all that knowledge and make it available to any other chiropractors that, want help achieving their dreams.
Awesome stuff.
Well, Dr. Eric, it's the first time I ever met you. I thought this interview was a lot of fun and super dynamic, and you're a very charismatic guy, and I look forward to having a friendship with you long term. I think that what you're doing is vital to the success of other people. And whenever I notice somebody else that's learning how to help more people, because that's the chiropractic mentality, it makes sense to monetize that too, because that helps you help more people. So I appreciate you being our guest today. And I know, as Luke always likes to close shows out, I'll let him go to that segment.
Dr. Eric, it's been a pleasure having you on our program today. And if you'll do me the honor of enjoying the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Luke. Jim, thank you very much. Most of all, thanks to the audience here who, gives us this platform to be able to share our ideas. Really appreciate all of you. Thanks very much, guys.
Awesome, Eric. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sure.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.